Hi everyone, welcome. How's everyone doing today? Hope you guys have your chai and coffee. If not, there's still time to go get some. Hey everyone. Hi Nick. So nice to have you here. Hey Rahul. Just gonna wait a minute or two before people hop in. Wow. So much support. So excited to have a deep dive conversation with Coach Varsha Mathur on love and empathy. I'm sure you guys can relate that there is a lot of conversation that needs to be done right now around empathy. Hi everyone. Thank you, Cocktail 26. Nice name. So before we deep dive into today's topic, rejuvenating relationships, I just wanted to take a second to acknowledge what's happening. As many of you are aware and have read, there have been protests that have erupted all across America, including in New York City. In fact, just steps away from where we are in Brooklyn right now. America is hurting, and this has been a really hard time period for many of us. George Floyd, a Black man, was brutally murdered by a white police officer. It was recorded on camera, and it happened with other police officers just looking on and not stopping it. Just talking about this is really working me up, so I'm really sorry about that. It has caused deep outrage, and this is why there are protests happening in America. This is happening all too frequently, and quite frankly, it is time for this to stop. We are tired of our fellow Black brothers and sisters losing their lives to police brutality and deep-rooted systemic racism. I may not know how to actively be a part of the larger conversation that is happening right now, but what I do know is this: Black lives matter, period. This is a humanitarian crisis, and this must stop right now. There's a lot of work that we need to do to really work on the problems. It is not enough to be not racist anymore. It is important to learn how to be an anti-racist. And that takes a lot of work. So I hope that everything that's happening around us and the situations that have happened and are bringing all of this to awareness, and that we really take the time to do the work and to learn what does it mean to be an anti-racist. This includes work within the South Asian community. Being a South Asian myself, I know that we are also people of color, but we do not treat other people of color with the same respect. And it is high time that we start doing so and be good role models for future generations. For me, a big starting point is empathy. I'm very empathetic to the Black community right now, to the protesters that are putting their lives out there to make their voices heard, to community leaders that are using their platforms to educate us. So for me, the starting point is empathy. And empathy is also a key ingredient in love. I hope we can all live in a world that is just a little bit more empathetic and loving. And on that note, I want to invite Coach Varsha Mathur to chat with us a little bit more about this. So please give me a second as I bring her on. Oh no, where is she? Just waiting. Hi, Richa.
Hi, thank you for
Hi,
having me.
Richa. How are you? Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks. And thank you, and thank you everyone for giving me that moment. Like I told you this morning, it's just been a really heavy weekend, and I know we're here to talk about love, but my heart's hurting. My heart really is hurting. And yeah, if you wanted to say anything about this, please feel free.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about just kind of having that empathy. And so many of us, like you said, have this inner feeling of confusion for, are we racist? Are we not racist? What do we do to show that we're allies to the people who are out there in the protests? And what I find is that, we can make our donations to the places that need it. We can show up and support the people who are out there. But in my opinion, the biggest thing that we can do is recognize the racist in ourselves and
Absolutely.
become really uncomfortable with it and start questioning where it comes from and what we're going to choose to do about it as individuals. Because that's where it all starts, right? If everyone could just have a deep look inside and say, oh, yeah, I'm part of the problem. I see it. And so now what am I going to do about it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I've also just felt like really overwhelmed with, obviously social media and connectivity. There's this information overload, and some of it has been really enlightening, but somewhere I feel like are people just kind of like putting stuff out there for the sake of it to just be a part of the conversation in the moment. I mean, I really even reflected on, is this the time for me to say this? But I have a platform, as small or as big as it is, and I did want to use my voice and highlight it. I just couldn't go in and have a conversation and pretend like the world around me is okay. I mean, in fact, we heard sirens all night. We're just steps away from the Williamsburg Bridge, steps away from downtown Brooklyn. So it's very much in the atmosphere. But
Mm-hmm.
I I want to remember this once things kind of, quiet down, if you may, and see, like, are people really doing that work? Like, that's where the work really starts.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about it and resharing stuff and reposting it is wonderful, but like, are we actually looking to invest that time?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. It doesn't matter when you start or how you
Exactly.
start. It's really about just going for it
Yeah.
and reminding yourself when you do forget to jump
Yeah.
back in.
Yeah. And you know what? Talking about doing the work, let's shift the conversation. Let's talk about you a little bit. So your background is fascinating. You were a full-time lawyer and now you're a life coach. So tell us a little bit about that transition and also tell us a little bit about what is a life coach. I know it's become more and more popular, but I'm not sure if people fully still know what it is.
Yeah, thank you. Right, I was a lawyer when I first started in my late 20s, went to law school. A lot of that was about what my parents asked me to do. And,
Sure.
they really wanted to, as immigrants, make sure that I had a footing to earn money and make a life for myself. And I had a lot of passion for it when I went into it and slowly learned that it was, for me, anyways, a lot of paper pushing and clocking your hours. And it didn't suit me personally. From there, I went into medical management and I started an urgent care business and did that for about 6 years. So it was 5 years of lawyering and then 6 years of that. And the environment completely changed for healthcare. So I uh, also at that time went through a divorce. Long stories that I have to tell. But the short story is when I married my current husband, got out of a really bad situation and took some time off and started blogging about my life. And that's where people started to kind of come out of the woodwork and ask me about my divorce and dating again when it was really difficult and uncomfortable, and then getting remarried. And I would hear things like, um, how did you get a man to propose twice when I can't even get a second date, or I wish I had divorced my husband 30 years ago. Like, I'm so
Wow.
proud of you. And these things really struck me. And that's why I wanted to create a space to help people.
And
Um,
it's also really rare and special to hear this kind of dialogue from a South Asian female. I just feel like as a society we've always kept these things right under the rug and we don't really talk about the divorces and the whys and you know dating again and then even getting married again. Like that's a lot. So really kudos to you for being brave to embrace your story and talk about it. I'm sure it's helped a lot of people out there.
Thank you. And thank you for creating a space to let that dialogue happen. I
Yeah,
mean,
of
it is
course.
so important to get supported by other South Asians so that the conversation continues and people know that they're not alone.
Yep. So, what exactly is life coaching? Could you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, life coaching is a way to create support and accountability for your future. And the background is that you are whole and you are complete, and there is nothing to fix in your life. And there's also stuff that you're always going to want more of, that you want for your future, whether it's career, whether it's love. And coaching allows you to have someone that is always going to stand up for that future that you are able to create and help you make it possible for you to create.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, so, when we talk about relationships and coaching, there's been obviously a lot of changes that have happened in our world right now. I feel like, now that we're officially kind of moving into this post COVID world, a couple of weeks ago, probably the conversation was like, how do we work on the new dynamics of our relationship? And maybe couples had just started, figuring that part out. And now that dynamic is shifting again, right? Like maybe people have lost their job. Maybe the way people work have changed. The way we're socializing, how we're going to spend our summer has changed. How do we continuously have these conversations with our partner and like reset our expectations as the world around us changes?
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of theories about this, and the first one
I know it's a loaded question. I'm so sorry.
No, I love it. I always believe that you are either killing, neglecting, or growing your relationship at any given moment. And it's okay where you're at, but recognizing what you're doing is really important. And if a relationship is going to be at 100% at any given time, it doesn't necessarily mean 50-50 or that one person should have to do all of the work to get it at 100. Like you're going to have times when it's 60-40 or 90-10, and that's okay as long as you recognize what your stance in that moment is and what your partner might need as well in those moments. Right. It's really important to not just show up as your greatest self, but to recognize the greatest version of your partner so that you can respect them and acknowledge them for what they're doing for you as well.
Right. And is that something like you actually have a dialogue with your partner about where you say like, hey, I'm going to bring 70%, I'm going to do the 70% of the work, or is this more like an internal dialogue?
It's a little bit of both. I believe strongly in communicating everything. I think it's really important for couples to have what I call pillow talk. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have it in the bed or on the pillow. But really making sure that at least for 1 minute, like 60 seconds out of the day is a time for you to connect and just be clear on like what your intentions are for each other and for the day. And yeah, it does mean setting boundaries and setting up rules and making sure that when you ask for something, you're not seeming judgmental or you're not giving the blame game, playing the blame game.
Got it. Yeah, that's really interesting. That leads me into my next question, which is really more like actionable takeaways. Are there any like specific tools you can share with people that are joining in listening of things that they can do to enhance the quality of their relationship? Like the pillow talk is a great example. Are there any additional tools like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's going to vary so much with every couple. So really look at like, what's bothering you and, why is it that you feel like you need these tools? Because that often will tell you what the tools are that you need to use. But I always recommend, trying out some alone time and making sure that you both have your space. And doing so in a way that's really in communication, always giving each other the know of where you're going to be, what you're going to do. And right now with everyone being together in the home, it's really important to like have your set space. And know that like, hey, this is the time I'm going to be in my space. Like, don't disturb me. I'm going to have my phone off even. And just respect each other enough to keep each other in the know.
Yeah. I am a big proponent of space, and it definitely took us a couple of weeks to like figure that out in the beginning, and now we've gotten into a rhythm and it feels great where it's like, this is my downtime, this is my reading time, this is like my work area, and like we just, even though we're in one home, like we need to create these bubbles, and division of space in our mind just to get that me time, like you said.
Yeah. And you can,
sorry, go ahead.
No, you come back so much more rejuvenated when you allow each other that time.
Yeah.
And the key really is, especially because sometimes in a relationship, somebody is more emotionally attached. And so it's really important for them to know that it's not about anything bad in the relationship. It's really just about strengthening yourself even.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to address the people out there that are not in relationships, that are dating, that are looking for love. Obviously, dating is going to be a little different for the rest of the year. I'm really curious, can you still successfully date while maintaining social distance?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It is about shifting your mindset as to what that's going to look like. I think some apps are definitely making it easier to do video chats, and that's a great way to jump in. And I've always told single people, like, jump on a phone call before you meet somebody anyways, when you meet them, because nowadays it's just like chat, text, let's meet at a bar or a coffee shop.
And that's such a big commitment, right? Even from your time perspective, like getting ready, getting there, and then like maybe you're stuck with somebody you're not really interested in for 2 hours. Like you can really mitigate that by just hopping on the phone. Old
Yeah.
school. It's old school, but it works.
It's old school and it's always worked. And it allows you to vet the person, save your time, like you're saying. And like that initial conversation, you know if you're going to click with the person or not. You know, I remember being on the phone with people and getting so irritated. You know, like feeling like, oh, am I on an interview right now, or is this person trying to like date me?
Oh yeah, those were my favorite. Where like the first question is, "Oh, so what do you do?" And like, "How long have you been there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll just send you my resume." Like that's one of my biggest tips out there. When you're talking to someone, please don't grill them about their work right away. Like that is a part of them, but that doesn't necessarily give away their essence, right? And that's what you want to learn.
Yeah, yeah, and you hit it on the nail. Like you are, you know, you don't want to waste your time because you're worthy of something so much deeper. And if you allow yourself to just churn through dates and not really choose the ones that are worth your time, it's going to always seem like you're on a lot of bad dates
Yeah.
because you're just not doing the weeding out process.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I just want to interrupt to say, hey guys, thank you for tuning in. Anyone who has questions, I saw a couple of questions come up. If you could put them in the question box, just makes it a little bit easier for me to find them. We're definitely going to get to those in a minute. So thank you for being here and just put in your questions in the little question box on the bottom of your screen. Marsha, that leads me to another question of, so somebody, let's say they have decided to take the plunge into a virtual date. What are like 3 to 5 relevant talking points that they should do to actually vet that person?
I would say don't plan anything, number one, and really allow yourself to be your natural self. And I think a lot of that has to do with the prep work that you do beforehand in being in a space within yourself that really is truly you. So do what you got to do to like feel good about yourself before you get into the conversation. And then secondly, have a conversation that's not, like you said, about like, what do you do? And are you close to your family? And, you know, do you like to travel? And
Yeah.
instead, look to ask questions that dive deeper. So instead of, do you like to travel? Ask them about the last trip or the last concert and like what they actually enjoyed about it, how they spend their holidays, so that you're getting that subliminal subtext of the conversation rather than just the black and white answers.
Great point. That's such a great point. I feel like these days everyone says we love to travel, but like what do you really learn from that about a person?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, also it really helps to get the people who already love you and support you to give you a little bit of a pep talk and talk to you about like what you're good at and what you're not good at, and really say, are you a conversationalist? Are you not? How can you improve on that? The people who love you are going to be willing to be really frank and honest and give you what you need to like be a really good to show up the way that you really truly ought to as your authentic self. And to like just be a good comfortable space for the potential partner.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question that came up earlier. I'm sorry I missed the person who said it, but they said something about the pillow talk that we were talking about earlier. Of like, how, do you have to teach your partner to do that, or it's just something like you lead the way about? Like, how do you introduce that into a relationship if it was never there before?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And what I will warn you about is that it is going to be super awkward and you might get laughed at and you might even feel a little bit of like tension with your partner when you first start to try these kinds of things. Anticipate that. Just don't expect it to happen naturally in day one. You're all of a sudden more intimate and more communicative. You know, really give it like little baby steps and try things out. And when you start to get that pushback, if you do, ask them what would work for them. You know, how do they see this playing out for you? And they may not want pillow talk. They might want hallway talk or coffee talk or, you know, whatever. But really be intentional about like what you want to get out of it and see if they see something in it for themselves as well.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Like it's great to educate yourself and get advices, but at the end of the day, it's not a one shoe fits all, and we do need to find solutions that work for us. So that's kind of like the overarching theme. And now maybe you can go home and try and figure out, well, how do I apply this to my marriage specifically?
Yeah, yeah. And your partner's going to feel so respected when you ask them for their input
Yeah,
and not just expect what you see.
yeah.
Because sometimes what you see isn't necessarily the only way to get what you want.
Right. This is kind of what connects with us saying earlier about like empathy, like just even recognizing our partner, making them feel loved and making that space for them can enhance the quality of your relationships, of your dates, even the conversations that you have, and just people, right? Your connections with people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
We have another question that's come in. It says, what is your take on going to bed upset after an argument or a fight with your
Yeah,
significant other?
yeah. I know the go to thing that people say is don't go to bed angry.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it always just depends on where you're at because having arguments and throwing stuff at each other is also not good.
Right.
So if it is required that you have a cool off period, I mean, only you and your partner are going to know that. And if you cannot find peace and yet your partner is like willing to just go to bed and it doesn't bother them, then you may have to also look for that peace elsewhere. And don't be alone in that. Like reach out to people other people who can support you.
Yeah.
Your soulmate is not only your romantic partner. Like you can actually
Yes.
get support and love from other people in your life.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. And thanks for like bringing that up. There is the stigma around like, oh, you must go to bed not angry with your partner, and it can feel a little stressful because if the emotions are there and you've not dealt with it, maybe you are going to go to bed upset, right? So yeah, thanks for recognizing that
It's
it's
so
okay.
important. Yeah, it's really important to know like why it is you don't want to go to bed yet and what it is that you need because often sometimes I'll even have to tell my husband like, "Hey, I need you to like let me know that this isn't about me and that you're just tired."
Yeah.
You know, so that we can talk about this later when you're not tired, but I can know that you're not mad at me
Yeah.
or that this isn't something that's going to disrupt our entire relationship.
Yeah, so it doesn't become personal because that's when it hurts, like when it's personal. So if it's not, that definitely is a part forward in terms of the healing.
Yeah.
Varsha, there's a question specifically for you about what was that turning point that you realized that life coaching was what you wanted to do?
Oh, thank you for that. Like I said, there were way too many women, especially South Asian women, who were not speaking about these topics. Divorce, the fights that happen behind the scenes, and once I started realizing that, and there were a lot of people who were very close to me that I thought were doing great in life, that just had a lot of hidden stories and weren't getting supported.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was really about providing support for people who so that they don't feel alone and so that they don't get burdened by these stigmas and these like judgments by society in when they're making their life decisions. And the thing about coaching is that it empowers you to know that you are everything that you need and that it is really just about staying on the path that keeps you going towards what you want and not about thinking that you're not enough. And I love that.
Yeah.
In fact, I have my own coach. I intend to have a life coach for the rest of my life. It's about really trusting in the process of making your dreams come true.
That's amazing. I read a book recently. I can't remember the name. How do you talk to your therapist? And it's basically about a therapist who has her own therapist. And I thought that was great because you can be an expert in a space, but you're still a person. You're still a human. You still need somebody to talk to as well.
Yeah, I mean, I highly recommend making sure your coach has a coach because it is actually something that keeps you growing and makes you a better quality coach for your clients.
Yeah.
And I just, I know that I show up better when I'm clear minded and no one has everything together. You know, like you just said, like there's always something more that I want for myself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any parting words before we start wrapping up on how people that are in relationships and not can just ensure they get through 2020 as effectively and as healthy as possible? I know this year has just really slammed everyone's mental health, and that doesn't always put us in the best place to be our best self. So what are some things people can do to just get through the rest of this year and really thrive through it.
Yeah, I think the best thing to remember is that, and this is not just for relationships, but remember that what's happening that may be making your emotions go crazy or making your relationship strained is potentially just circumstantial. And really look at whether or not this has always been a conflict for yourself or for your relationship, or whether it really will go away when things become a little normal again. And think about how to merely address it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dara, my friend, just hopped in and she's a part of my book club, and she reminded me of the name of the book. So maybe you should talk to someone. So that was the name of the book that I was trying to refer to.
I mean, I'm a huge believer in therapy as well. I always talk about how that's more healing about your past, whereas coaching is more future based.
Varsha, if people want to connect with you to learn more about your services and how they can work with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can DM me here on Instagram, of course. On my website, you can schedule a complimentary session to kind of learn about whether coaching's right for you. You can also email me, coachingbyvarsha.com. I'm sorry, coachingbyvarsha@gmail. And I'm just happy to kind of learn where you're at and whether coaching is something that can actually do something for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you got that. Coachingbyvarsha@gmail.com. I will put tag her once this video is out, so you can find her as well on Instagram, or definitely check out Varsha's website in case you wanted to schedule a complimentary coaching session.
Yeah, there's a bunch of like freebies and information on my profile link as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you and your husband have a great summer ahead, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you even after this. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. This is so wonderful. Good luck. I love what you're doing.
Thanks, Varsha. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Guys. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.